We're live.
Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome for this week's Socratic dialogue based on theories. So, I'm the moderator for today's session, and now I request all team members to please introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, I am Shivam Dubey from Team Mindset.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. I'm Sanjeevni Sinha and I'm from Team Mindset.
Hello everyone, I'm Yashita and I'm from Team Mindset.
Hello everyone. Today I will be the coach for Team Mindset.
Hello everyone, I'm Janvi Shukla and I'm from Team 9 Synapse and I work as a data champion at DT.
Hello everyone, I am Mehak and I'm from Team Synapse.
Hello everyone, myself Priyam Misra and I am from Team Synapse.
Hello everyone, myself Satyuk Surenshi and today I will be the coach for Team Synapse.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am Simran Tiwari and I'm working as an industrial psychologist in DT. And I'm the moderator for today's session.
Hello everyone, I'm Soumitra and I'm co-mod for Tuesday's SE session and I work as data champion in Unique Biotech.
Okay, so now I would like to ask which team wants to go first?
They would like to go first.
Okay, so now I request Team Synapse to tell us that why you put your team name as Synapse, and also please summarize your pitch in short, and then you can proceed.
So we took the name Synapse because Synapse, showcases which is the universal connector between all, which connects the universal learning and adaptation system, which can be seen in neurons, AI, and whatnot. And in our pitch, we're going to talk about that learning isn't just the logic of human nature, rather, learning is a universal inbuilt character of the nature.
Now you can summarize your pitch in short.
Okay, we would like to summarize our pitch as learning is not just a human ability. It's a universal process found in nature, technology, and society where systems adapt and evolve through experiences and through feedbacks. Over to you, Meg.
Yeah, so in our pitch, we are going to talk about that how learning and adaptation is a universal nature, not just human nature. It can be seen in many phases, like in AI, you know, uh, then in the market, in the education that we do, in slime molds, even those organisms which do not have brain. So learning is universal and it's not restricted to just human. Yeah. Can we have the next slide, please? So it goes on to genetic mutations, again by Charles Darwin theory of survival of the fittest, crystals, protein folding, and all. Now I would like my another teammate to explain the next.
Can you guys please, next slide please. So let's talk about the pattern recognition. So when we see across all systems, whether it is biological, it is artificial or social, learning follows universal cycles of observation, experimentation, feedbacks, and adaptation. Can we have the next slide? And from our talking about our theory, the adaptive systems improve by cycling through observations, variations, feedbacks, and also an adaptation. This theory explains how diverse systems evolve. Next slide, please. And talking about the application of our project, the project applies the universal learning cycles by integrating feedbacks, variations into its design, enabling personalized iterative development for continuous refinements and growth. Up to you, Janvi.
Okay, so we will be like to conclude with that theory building reveals universal patterns. It helps us to design flexible and adaptive system across different fields, like across different domains, and we keep evolving just like the universe. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Synapse. Now I request Team Mindzip to go with your questions.
Okay, so I would like to ask a question. You said that learning is sometimes metaphorical. Could you elaborate on that?
So yeah, I would like to answer that. Learning is metaphorical, which means in systems like a crystal system, crystals and proteins fold on basis of the enthalpy, like the surrounding in nature. So it is totally influenced by the nature. That's why it is said it is to be metaphorical. It directly skips on to the steps of adaptation.
So just if they're stepping on that steps, they're just adapting. So that means it becomes metaphorical.
They adopt and self-organize based on the feedback which they get from the environment.
Any follow-up questions, Sanjeevni?
Yeah, I still don't understand how is exactly it is a metaphor then, because it is observable, right? Like you're they're experiencing something and then building upon it and adapting on it. Then how is it metaphorical?
So I would
It
like
is
to answer.
experiential then, right?
I would like to answer that. So metamorphical basically means it's figurative. Like when we talk about proteins and crystal structures, it totally depends upon their environment. The enthalpy changes the heat around them and the adjacent structures which they have. So basically, it adapts to the nature first. It can't directly, the proteins themselves are not neuroplastic, that they can recognize themselves and the surrounding nature. So it adapts to the changes which are happening. That's why it is said to be metamorphical. Even for those organisms which are said to don't have a brain, the learning is always metamorphical.
Like for example, she gave the example of the crystals, right? So they form stable patterns through physics laws, right? They don't use they're not getting the feedbacks from the environment that you're not doing it right. They do it right from the laws of the physics.
Does that answer your question, Sanjeevni, or do you have any
Yeah, yeah,
follow-ups?
yeah, got it.
Uh, okay. Team Mindzip, any more questions?
Yes, I would like to ask a question. You talked about feedback loops and interlinked it with adaptive systems, right? Adapting and learning. How does negative feedback influence the learning process?
So I would like to answer that since we stated a cyclic framework, that first was the observation, second was, generating the variations that we see, then was the feedback, and then taking into it and then journalizing. So negative feedback would totally tell you that what you are currently doing is not correct. Rather, you should opt for a better way to do so. Like for example, if you're working with the AI, you are training it with data, right? So like currently dating, when you take some grammar on it, like slowly and slowly the chat gpt got into a good grammar voice. Earlier it used to do grammatical mistakes. It even still does grammatical mistakes in other languages like German or Italian if you write.
We also mentioned in the critique of our theory that learning is a self-evolved, like self-explanatory pattern, right? So it depends on how people take it, like how it is taken.
Uh, does that answer your question, Rashita? Do you have any follow-up?
No.
Team Mindzip, any more questions? Team Mindzip?
Yeah, so you mentioned how we look for patterns while we're learning and adapting, right? So looking for patterns generally leads to a lot of bias. So how would we explain that? How would we learn new things if we keep, finding patterns in similar things? Wouldn't we be in that bias always?
How exactly do you mean pattern is related to a bias?
Okay, for example, if okay, so if I go to a place, right, and I usually find pretty flowers there, right? I keep going to that place. I keep associating, right? It becomes a pattern for me. It becomes I learn it that this place, this area has flowers in it. One day I go there, it's a barren land. right? But my association, the pattern that I have connected in my brain says that they're supposed to be there, right? Then isn't the learning getting flawed if we're just looking for a pattern? Maybe
For a
this is not
much
the
for
best
a
example.
for a much better example,
Yeah.
suppose a child learns to read on, text which is biased. Like always, boys are leaders, boys are CEOs. Okay, and women are only housewives and all. So based on this, if he reads on this biased text, won't he pick up the pattern of biasness?
So I would like to answer that. If we have read, there's an observational bias even in laboratories that we do, which totally claims that it is at the human end. Not all humans make the same observational bias. It depends to person, system to system. If you like the example that you quoted about boys are always leaders, it totally depends upon the parenting. If the parenting is good, there's no observational bias. At like if we have a brain, it's open to explore. What does observation basically means? It means to look each and everything equally well, analyzing it well, and then coming to a conclusion. If we are lacking the basic observation, this totally means it's the error at the human end.
What about
All
learning those aspects where there are no patterns?
okay, we would like to confirm that by adapting to patterns, we do not mean that we just keep repeating that what worked before, or we keep repeating the same thing that happened and follow that pattern. What we mean by analyzing that pattern is understanding uh,
What
how
if
to
there
move
is no
forward with the
pattern?
sorry,
So I
ma'am.
would like to answer that. If you say there's no pattern, then there won't be a theory. It's a hypothesis. A theory is only made when an recurring pattern is observed. You're joining the dots. Then only you can confirm it's a theory. Otherwise, we are still questioning a hypothesis.
I'm not satisfied with the answer.
Okay, what we mean is that in our learning cycle, feedback is crucial. That is why we mentioned that feedback is the crucial point behind that. So what exactly? So by feedback, we exactly mean that we do not need to follow the same pattern. By pattern, we just mean that we need to understand how something was done and then go on to checking it if it's working or not. Then get a feedback on
So
it and
instead
then
of
evolve
pattern,
based on it.
can we call it experience?
Or you better may call it connecting the dots. Even if you don't see a something recurring again and again, you still a
Pattern
human brain
doesn't
can.
generally mean recurring again and again, isn't it?
But instead of using a pattern, you can even connect the dots. That you learn one thing, the human brain will connect it to another after some times.
Still, the answer to the question, what if there is no pattern? How will you learn that thing? Suppose you're learning a new language. Okay, like English, now you're learning a new language. How would you connect that language? Since there is no pattern, right? There may be pattern in sentence formation, but the words which you learn that are new to you, which are new in the new language, how would you connect that?
Okay, so when I'm learning a new language, saying English, a teacher told me this and this so in English too. Like whenever I see the next word, my brain would automatically connect the dot. Okay, this is an English word and I should know it. That's how it's doing. There's no pattern to it. I'm hearing it for the first time, but still I have that curiosity in my brain to interpret it, to learn it because I am connecting it to it. That okay, I'm learning this new language and the word is related to it, even if I don't know the meaning to it. This often happen with kids. They don't know the meaning to it, but they still know what word it is.
But why do they know? Why do they keep on repeating? Because they have heard and heard it again and again, right?
Okay,
Yeah, that
Shivam, I feel it's the question is going in a loop. So in the interest of time, we'd like to move to Team Mindzip switch.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Over to Team Mindzip for their pitch and the summary of the pitch and why did you name yourself Mindzip?
We named the team mindset because the brain does not remember everything, it just compresses. So, like a zip file, it stores just enough to work with. Even like toddlers and scientists do it, they simplify first and then build from there. And talking about the summary, we think people understand the world better by shrinking big complex things into simpler ones. This helps us learn, create, and solve problems more easily. but it also reminds us not to oversimplify things and the things that really matter. The next slide, please. Let's just start by defining the problem space. As we know that we live in a world that is full of complexity and it is too much to take all at once. So to simplify everything, our mind shrink, model and simplify it to survive and create. So if we talk about the question, is mental compression really the engine behind it? In our pitch, we'll try to explain it with the help of Piaget's cognitive development theory. Next slide, please. So we are taking up 5 observations for the same. We compress large files into zip files. A tweet can start a revolution. Google Maps compress entire cities into screens. Kids learn language by listening, not studying grammar. Memes deliver deep ideas in seconds. If we interlink all these observations, we can see that we are just dividing rich problems and rich experiences into simpler and concise methods.
Moving forward, when we come to recognizing the pattern, connecting the dots, all these examples we saw, they kind of reflect one deep instinct that we tend to shrink complexity and then act on it. Like zip files, they store massive data, but for efficiency, they store it in small packets. So we trade detail for usability, speed, and meaning. So the pattern here is that understanding is compressing complexity into schema that we can, carry, share, and build upon. Then, if we talk about our theory, so as I said, we don't carry the full complexity, right? So, according to Piaget's stages of development, first we start with pure sensory interaction, then we move on to mimicking, and as we grow older, we recognize how to model abstract systems, and then go on to theorizing. So, the theory here is that cognition is equal to progressive compression. We keep recompressing things to learn.
Okay, so how do we use story in our projects? We design around how the brain works, like simple, visual, and intuitive. Onboarding flows match the user's mental model at each step. We sketch early, testing ideas before we build them. Even our code is modular, like just like how the mind chunks information. Moving on.
Team mind.zip, 1 minute remaining.
Compression isn't always perfect. We might miss what really matters. It doesn't fully capture emotion, culture, or context. Something should be explored, not simplified. Moving on. Building. So the conclusion is that building this theory helps us connect scattered insights into one big idea. Compression is how the mind works. It's how we learn, build, and explain. And we will keep testing and refining this lens as we grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Mind.zip, for your pitch. Over to Team Synapse for their questions.
You talked about Piaget's theory, right? So what does it really means to develop our cognitivity related to our mind's cognitivity? What does your theory really means?
Okay, so basically, Piaget's theory talks about how the cognition develops, how our thought processes, the internal mental processes evolve. So it starts with stages like sensory motor. For example, just we just depend upon our senses. We listen to something, we try to mimic it. We look at something, we try to mimic it, right? And then slowly and gradually we become more abstract. First it's concrete, then we move on to more abstract models, right? We start learning different mental models and try to apply them.
Any follow-up question, Team Synapse? Okay, any more question?
Yes, I want to ask that when do we understand that compression becomes oversimplification? How do we deal with that?
When we miss out on details, when we see that some things are missing out. And most of the times we like the details are stored in the chunk. Since our working memory has only 4 slots at a particular time, we store it in chunks And if we want to get details, we focus more on the chunks and go deep inside it into the different aspects and
Like, are you
details
answering
about
or
that
are you
thing.
questioning?
Answering.
Can you keep it short? Moderator, can we please make sure that back to the question box, was your question answered by him?
So how do we know what exactly needs to be removed when we are compressing it?
Okay, so compressing does not mean removal, right? When we make a zip file, do we remove the data from it?
Yes, but you also talked about how memes convey the messages.
So it is giving a compressed version of it. If, of course, we want to go into the details, then we have to, de-zip the file. We can't just look at all the details. You first open the zip file to look at everything.
But if we take that example, won't that lead to misinformation or misleading information?
No, see, since the entire information is, the key idea is presented. Okay, instead of presenting the entire booklet, we present the key idea, the core idea. Using the Pareto principle, you can say.
So are you telling me that there's no chance of misinterpretation as questioned by Janvi?
There is chance of misinterpretation, but it comes along with bias.
How do you deal with it?
There is misinterpretation. I think, first of all, the chances of misinterpretation is less because we are chunking that data itself. The data on which
But every
we are
human
going into the
interprets,
details.
every human interprets everything very differently, right? So
Right.
even when things are explained very well, people tend to misinterpret. So in something like this, I'm sure there's a chance of misinterpretation. So what can be your check and balance for that?
To an example.
Even that can be misinterpreted, right? The problem with short form content or these memes or whatever you're talking about is it can easily be misinterpreted. So how do you deal with that?
We can write it in very simpler words so that there is a very less chance of misinterpretation in it, and there's not much scope of reading between the lines.
So Sanjeevni, I heard you speak about briefly about how you're applying Piaget's developmental psychology theory, right? So how are you applying it in your project?
So basically, we're talking about how the brain compresses information into mental models to learn better. So
Right.
as Piaget talks about schemas, right? So those are mental frameworks. So we took observations, for example, Google Maps, right? We have the entire world in one app. So that is what we're taking from it. That in our projects, how we can apply those schemas, those mental frameworks.
So there are a lot of adults who have problems with abstraction itself, right? Like there are certain areas they can abstract, but abstraction is not a process that they tend to apply everywhere. So how do you deal with that? I understand there are a privileged few who could benefit out of what you're offering, but for those who have unfortunately not gone through that natural process for whatever reasons, how do you make your, technology inclusive for them as well? Let alone schemas or mental models, they tend to have challenges in abstraction itself. For example, somebody asked you about Piaget and you said that as you grow, you tend to abstract. But I'm not sure how many people understood what you said. This whole concept of abstraction is understood by less than 10% of uh, people who finish higher education also, let alone others.
We can use very basic examples that they see in their everyday routine activities to inculcate the theory to them.
So I don't think she also
So,
understood my point also.
so
Sanjeevani, you get my point, right?
yeah,
She
yeah, I
understood what I'm
got
saying.
that.
So it's not about how they understand, right? It's about do they have the procedural capability. Schemas are one level higher, right? If you go by what you just said. So forget schema to even get to abstraction. They have they have that limitation in being able to engage in abstraction.
Yeah, to move on to abstraction, we need to be, developed at the concrete level as the mimicking and the modeling. If that is there, then only we can move to the abstraction. So if we first focus on building that, right, if they can actually look at other people, their seniors using those models, and then first getting to realize how to mimic it, how
Mimic
to
what?
exactly
Sorry.
model it. Could you repeat?
What? Mimic what? Sorry.
How to apply those frameworks. For example, if a person who does not understand abstraction, if I provide, an abstract idea in front of them, they'll not be able to grasp it and understand the schema behind it. But if they have already perfected their concrete levels, which is mimicking and modeling it by observing someone else, so then they can gradually build onto the abstraction.
So once somebody turns 25 years old, can they still, is their brain still moldable to acquire this abstraction capability? So that will be an interesting question, right? To check, to do a literature review and understand what does the body of research tell. Is it something that somebody can acquire only at childhood, or can it also be acquired later? Because while working with a lot of, see, I'll give you an example, right? So if you look at a web designer, the difference between a web designer and a front-end developer, web designer can write static code. Dear Sanjeevni, dear Yashita, dear Mehak, and so on. Now, to be a front-end developer, one very simple thing we require is to be just able to write dear X and write a program to replace that X with the name. So there are a lot of people who probably go through 1 year or 2 years of training in software development and still struggle to do something as petty as this. They're not able to think of the entire code in a dynamic fashion. So that's why we suggest that they become UI designers or web designers or something else, because they're unable to think dynamic. But if you think of it from a psychological or from a cognitive lens, it is their inability to abstract out. And this is a very high value problem, right? Because as the world is moving into the AI revolution, the ability to think abstract is pretty important to prompt AI the right way. So I just thought of asking you that question since I heard Piaget. Because I mean, I hope you don't leave it as just a Socratic dialogue topic, because what you are proposing is a very impactful idea if it can actually be implemented. Because I see too many dreams, too many career dreams getting smashed because of inability to abstract out. So I would be very curious to know if it can be acquired, if this ability can be acquired even after the age of 25. Because in Deep Thought, we experimented some exercises to do the same, and we saw a correlation. And that was very startling. You would assume that the people who are unable to, do this abstract to concrete, concrete to abstract would be individuals with low IQ, right? We saw a correlation that people who are unable to do this, although our sample size was not more than 100, but even in that 100 sample size, we could see that people who are unable to do this were individuals with low EQ. These were individuals who are very self-critical, who have a lot of sharp edges, who get angry very soon, and who have difficulties in executing. And then we realized this was a great way to recruit people, because when we would give them this practice of concrete to abstract and abstract to concrete, we would know if this is a person who can execute or if this is a person who can't execute. The people who are overthinkers were having a difficulty with this. So we found out that this was more about EQ than about IQ. And if it is a pure EQ thing, I think in deep thought, we've seen that with 90% of the people, that problem of self-critical can be solved with gratitudes and contribution journals. That can be solved. But some of this abstraction piece we've not been able to solve. Maybe I've pressed it too much, but I would say this is a huge problem. I've been searching for an answer for this for at least 9 years now. I'm not kidding. I'm searching for an answer for this for 9 years. And I've come to an extent that, okay, these are people, they won't get there. Let me not try too hard. These are people, okay, who already got there. Okay, let me hire them. But if this problem can be solved, this will be a huge gift to humanity. And this is needed in the AI age right now. And that's why, I got triggered and came back here. I'm like, okay, this was a question I was looking for an answer for a long time, and people are discussing this. But Sanjeevni, I hope you got the question, right?
Yeah, I get more literature review on this. We go through more.
You're saying you want them to mimic, but I'm saying that process of abstraction is something they're struggling with. So how would they even mimic that?
No, I did not say that they mimic the abstraction, right? I'm talking about the process of
But they
reaching
can't
that
see that
abstraction.
abstract picture.
Yeah.
You give them an example, they're stuck in the example. You give them an example to tell a concept, they're stuck in the example. They're not seeing the concept. So you ask them to mimic, they mimic the concrete. They don't mimic the... you got my point, right? See, even when I give examples in my Socratic way of explaining something, right? I see that people are stuck in my example. What I'm trying to tell as a concept, they're not getting it. And now, see, now this is even more tricky because this is an abstraction on an abstraction. And the problem when you're in the product space is you go into multi-layer abstractions. Why do you go to, see, let's say you're making the Zoom app, right? When you make the Zoom app, you make it abstract. Deep thought is going to use it for a Socratic dialogue. Somebody is going to use it for a parent-teacher meeting. Somebody is going to use it for something else. You find an abstract pattern of all those use cases and build it as a product. So then eventually you abstract out of this abstraction, and then you think of what kind of infrastructure you create for it and so on. And eventually there are some products which are so universal that the product is at 3 levels of abstraction. So this is the need of the hour when you're talking of AI and technological future and so on, because you go to make very global products, and by global products necessarily they're abstract. This is what makes cognitive psychology interesting, right?
Yeah.
You want to know what really goes on inside the brain. Why is it that these people
Yeah.
are able to do and these people are not able to do it? Glad you guys picked up this topic.
Yeah, okay. So, any more questions, Team Synapse? Okay, so lastly, we'll just take 3 reflections. So, who wants to go for the reflection? You can raise your
You
hands.
can call all the Meta SD people here.
Yeah.
They're in D&D, buffer room 1, right? But why are you... It's okay, fine, no worries. Yeah, I can close. Yeah, back to you, Sylvan.
Okay. Yeah, hello everyone. So, I hope you hear the SD we have right now. So, I'll just taking the reflection. So, I request any one of you, like any five participants, to reflect what they have here today? You can raise your hands.
Who would like to go into the reflection first? Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
I believe we talked about theories and interlinked a theory with various observations that we see in our daily lives. So, as we discussed about Piaget's theory, it posed a question in our mind about abstraction and like at what age can we really grasp the concept of like that. So, I'd like to think about it in a different way, and I guess find an answer about it. So, it was a really insightful SDL.
Could you elaborate?
Yeah, I didn't get the question. Sorry.
No, what made it insightful to you?
Basically, pose questions in my mind. We talked about a theory, and we are trying to get to the root of that theory. We're talking about abstraction, and we're talking about abstraction in a way like how is it affecting, and what is the right age to grasp uh, that thing. So it is like really insightful in a way that it is uh, making me think of more insights and making me think of more questions that I can go and figure out later.
Okay.
So I would like to reflect. I was very much inspired by the Piaget's principle that how it is leading to like how it can solve the abstraction. And from my interpretation, the abstraction could be from either from selective learning theory or the bias which comes from certain individuals. As Tarun quoted, that there are certain people who are able to code nicely and can able to grasp the entire picture of the code, while just others of the same age group can't. So it could either be due to the selective learning bias, or as told that in compression, we majorly take the junk. It means they are leaving the outliers details which are essential to go to the depth of abstraction. Right.
Okay, go on. I'm doing something interesting. I'll share it after my ChatGPT thread is done. Whatever I asked you, I'm on ChatGPT right now. As you know, these days I talk more to ChatGPT than to people.
Yes, who wants to reflect? Come on, guys. Anyone wants to reflect, please come ahead.
Please unmute yourself and go ahead with the reflections, guys.
Not, I don't know if this counts as a reflection, it's more of a question. So when we were discussing, right, after 25, are people capable of acquiring this ability to abstract? So I was just wondering uh if does the lack of capability come from lack of early exposure, or is it just that some people just have a more have more mental rigidity, which stops them from being able to see those abstract patterns? But then that in turn relates to the whole nature nurture conflict, right? Is it that uh, I don't have a particular ability because I wasn't exposed to enough incidents involving it or requiring it as a child, or is it just that I don't have the capability of being able to take or learn from those experiences?
Okay, thank you, Paridi. We can discuss this question in the chat room. But any more reflections, guys?
Okay, guys. For those who are not reflecting, I think my ChatGPT experiment is now complete. I have some bad news for you if you're not reflecting. If you're not reflecting, probably tribals will beat you in thinking. People who've never gone to school, people who live in Amazon forest and all of that, they can beat you in thinking if you're not a person who's reflecting. Are you curious now? Okay. So I asked ChatGPT one question. So Sanjivni, I said 9 years I could not find out. No, in 9 minutes, ChatGPT could help me find out. So I asked ChatGPT this question: Ki John Piaget ka theory says this. Then why is it that? Wait, why do I tell you? I'll show you, right. So I'll just show you my exploration. So I asked this question: Ki John Piaget's theory talks of development in the child, but why do most adults struggle with abstraction? Abstraction requires cognitive effort. Abstract thinking is energy intensive. People want cognitive ease. The people who are not reflecting also, no, they want it to be easy on the brain. They don't want to put the effort. And formal schooling stops procedural learning. These are people who've gone to schools which only do rote learning. And socio-emotional factors block up fear of failure and all of this, right? Again, EQ stuff which I spoke about. And in some places, it's domain specific. Acha, this is the potential, not performance. Okay, interesting. I asked then, do tribals or societies that do not engage in formal learning acquire abstraction or formalism? Yes, but differently. Their abstraction is not in maths or formal logic, but is in lived experience. Not because they can't, but because there's no need for it in their culture. Mind prioritizes functional abstraction over symbolic manipulation. Why do people who do normal jobs, who do not abstract, say, in terms of product management, do they acquire formalism or abstraction? If someone's job is all about routine stuff, they don't abstract. Brain optimizes for efficiency, not abstraction. Most people in conventional jobs do not acquire formalism or abstraction unless they're intentionally challenged to think beyond tasks. Why do tribals acquire it while normal people don't? You're pointing at a paradox. Abstraction arises from contexts of necessity, not schooling. Tribals live in environments that demand constant attention to interdependencies, patterns, and long-term consequences. They often cannot afford to think superficially because a poor decision may cost them resources. Their survival depends on systems thinking. In contrast, normal urban jobs often reward local optimization, no cognitive pressure. Hey, is this insulting? Our lives don't require systems thinking. Tribals require systems thinking. So then I asked, what if someone is conditioned to not put effort into abstraction? Can it be acquired after a certain age? Yes. Individuals' identity, brain's plasticity never fully ends. But their identity has to shift and their environment has to demand and reward abstract thinking. Then I asked, so how do you help a person get that abstraction? Create a cognitive dissonance that feels safe. Use Socratic questioning to expose cracks in their current logic. Let them feel the cost of not abstracting. Avoid blame, instead create curiosity and surprise. Introduce reflection as a discipline. Make them reflect more. Move from tasks to systems. Give them language for abstraction. Yeah, this was interesting. So what's your takeaway? If you're not reflecting more, if you're not unmuting and talking more, what does it mean? Your environment has conditioned you to
Not think in systems or not be able to abstract.
Cognitive ease and all.
Do you want that cognitive ease? Then when deep thought asks you to speak, please unmute and speak. If you say there are 40 people, I can't speak, that's again a problem. EQ point, fear of failure. If you say I have a problem, right? I'll leave you with this thought. If you say, I have a problem, you know what I'll tell you? You don't have a problem and that's your problem. You didn't get my concept? Some of you got it right from the thread. What is it? You don't have a problem and that's your problem. You know what is it?
There is no cognitive pressure because there is not no problem.
Again, it's a
If it
paradox.
if it felt like enough of a problem, we would be changing it, right?
No.
Because it
It is
isn't an
because
issue.
you are living in a human society. Do you have the threat of a tiger coming and eating you next hour? Do you have a problem of where your next meal is going to come from? Are situations around you changing very rapidly? Basic survival situations are not changing. But that fellow who's living in that Amazon river, that fellow needs to be a systems thinker. Why?
Because their survival depends
Survival
on it.
depends on
Because he lives in a dynamic
Rapidly
environment.
changing environment.
They live in a very dynamic environment where the survival is affected by that dynamic stuff. Our survival is not affected by the dynamic stuff. We do the routine things right, we'll survive. So the question to ask is, am I stuck in that life where doing routine things is enough for me to survive? What is the problem if you're stuck in a life where routine things are enough to survive?
We can't able to think abstract.
Why?
Because we are at cognitive ease. We are not because nothing is challenging us.
Survival is
Utilizing a
granted,
capacity
right?
to think more.
See, there are some people who say, I have so many problems in life and cry and all. But let's understand this, right? If your survival is sorted, what does it mean?
You're free.
Already privileged.
There is no real problem.
You may want to sort your fear of failure. You may want to sort those internal emotional problems. If you're not speaking, would that be a problem? Why you're not speaking? Is it fear of failure? Fear of embarrassment? So what's the takeaway?
That the real problem is not having any problem.
Okay. But what's the takeaway? How do you develop abstract thinking then?
Unmute yourself and speak.
Soumitra unmutes a lot and speaks, but still doesn't have abstract thinking.
Okay.
What's the way then?
Reflect.
Put ourselves into uncomfortable situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? To get into uncomfortable situations often, so that you have that little cognitive dissonance, right? Where what you're seeing is uncomfortable to your brain. Then the brain starts putting that effort into thinking. And Sanjeevani, thanks a lot. I will advertise what I was supposed to advertise. Please make sure that every day you read one HBR article or one scholarly article, because that will again bring some cognitive dissonance, right? And weekly, at least 2 CEO interviews. Like yesterday, I put one interesting TED talk. I don't know how many of you watched it. It's beautiful. I think if you don't speak often, watch that TED talk, you'll completely change as a person. Did you check it out on Deep Thought group? I put that TED talk. So if you have a fear of failure, do watch it. It'll completely change you as a person. If you have huge fear of failure, it could be maybe because of your parenting or the childhood that you've gone through, right? It could have been due to that. Watch the TED talk. It'll help you reimagine your life. And one request for all of you is, whatever reflections, right, of the program management session you did, please, put your thoughts in the WhatsApp group, both in DT learners as well as in the client group, right? For DT, it is Project Unicorns group. For Unique Biotech, I think it's UBL Unicorns group, right? Please put your thoughts of what you learned and what your takeaways are from the session. Okay, that's it. Hope you have a great weekend, and hope we all put ourselves into that uncomfortable space of thinking, of developing our abstract thinking, and get into higher levels. And I hope you enjoyed seeing the dream. And I really hope at least 4 to 5 people eventually end up making the dream come true, go to United Nations, give that thing, or go to such a platform and be that thinker who's going to influence the world.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumitra. You and Jana, please बदल जाना. थोड़ा सुधर जाओ.
Okay, there.